of Mostly Peaceful Latinas. I'm your host, Linda.
And I'm your host, Bella.
And we are very excited to be back. It's been a couple of hectic weeks, is that how you say it?
It's been an excellent couple of weeks.
It's been an excellent couple of weeks, but to be fair, Bella was really sick for like
3 weeks.
The majority of
3 weeks,
April.
The majority of April.
She was out of commission and we couldn't record. And when Ian Smith came down, basically he took the place of Bella for that week. And
my dad was really confused.
Yeah. And so we have a lot to discuss. We also have a special guest today, our friend Anthony Cabassa, who we're going to let in a couple of minutes. Before we get started, please don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to our channel. It is the only way that we'll be able to grow. As you guys know, we only record once a week for now, and we want to grow. We want to be with you guys. But of course, if you can contribute, we are self-funded, then please share a video, like it, and subscribe to our channel.
No Illuminati, no lizard people. Just us against the communist left and the freak right.
The freak right. The freak right.
Thank you, Reina, for coming through with a contribution early on. She says, I just want to give a shout out to Adam. He flew from Florida this last weekend to help me move for my new job. He really did the hard labor. The hard labor work. I don't take him for granted. I hope you girls get a chance to meet him in person soon. Tears, bro. I love Adam so
Adam's
much.
The best. Adam's the best.
What an
Adam
icon.
Is the best.
I'm not even shocked. Reina, lucky you. Lucky you. Guys.
Are you on remember to put these up.
Yeah. Help us get on the algorithm. We'll wait a few minutes before we get started. I know Linda posted us on
Twitter, on Instagram.
Actually, the most important news is not Israel. The most important news for the MPL family is that this girl right here with 2 thumbs got her Twitter back. That's right. That's right. After 2 years of Billy Corbin surviving everything that we had coming to him because of my deplatforming, the oligarchs over at Twitter believed that it was worthy bringing me back. I might have had some help. I might have had a little help. Might have gotten a little bit of information. All I'm saying is your girl is back on Twitter, and you can find me at Red Pill Beba. BEBA.
Somebody's asking, what is the topic for tonight? We are going to bring in Anthony Cabassa. He's an independent journalist and a friend of the show. He has been covering the UCLA riots, the pro-Palestine versus the Zionists that's going on. It's actually an insurrection. I spoke to him on the phone yesterday, and he said that this is probably one of the craziest things that he has ever seen before. And Anthony has covered a lot of riots. He covered the 2020 riots, the Summer of Love. He's always out in LA covering Antifa and everything that happens because, of course, LA has a lot of social justice warriors. And he says that he's never seen anything like this. So we are going to bring him on so we can talk about that. There's also a new hate speech bill. If you watch this show, I know a lot of you do. I know people like Adam, Reina. I know Emery, Roy. A lot of you guys keep up with Mostly Peaceful Latinas. And Vanessa, you know that Vanessa as well, Erica. And you know that we have covered before extensively since I think 2022, since the Kanye situation was going on, when Kanye was acting up and he was catching beef with the Jews, blah, 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 blah. We've talked about the anti-Semitism bills that are passing per state, places like Texas, places like Florida, places like states like Georgia, also South Dakota. They're called anti-Semitism bills, and pretty much they're hate speech bills. Once again, we go back to hate speech
limiting bills.
Everything hate speech is free speech per the Constitution. It's been settled plenty of times. But these legislators, the uni-party, they continue to try to censor Americans. And I think that a lot more people are talking about it because it's usually dissidents and people like us with smaller platforms that are saying HB 269 here in Florida is going to pass. We need to talk about it. We need to talk about it. There's absolutely no opposition. It passes. No one does anything about it. Now I see people like Charlie Kirk talking about it.
Well, I mean, I think that
this is big.
they se pasaron.
Yeah.
Es que se pasan. Y se pasaron. They went too far. And they went so far that it became a red pill, because most people, particularly when you realize that, as we've mentioned many times before in the show, evangelicals are probably truly the greatest ally that Israel has in America. And when you start passing laws that say that certain things in the Bible cannot be said because that's called anti-Semitism, even your greatest ally is going to have some questions after that.
Right.
So, this is definitely becoming a red pill moment, I feel.
Yeah.
For most
I'm
people.
asking Anthony if he is ready. And also a very controversial figure, Nick Fuentes, that has been banned from Twitter, also probably since 2020, is going to be allowed back on Twitter. Nick Fuentes is probably one of the most controversial political and cultural figures of our time. He is a 24-year-old streamer, and he has a lot of takes that the general population wouldn't agree that are controversial in terms of race mixing, in terms of Jewish people, and other things that you probably can't discuss on this channel. But Elon Musk today said that he was going to let him back on the app. He hasn't done anything illegal. Can you put it on silent, please? He hasn't done anything illegal. So, okay. Anthony is ready. Sorry, we didn't know Anthony was already here with us. So let's let Anthony in.
Let's bring Anthony Cabassa in. Oh!
Mexican dad.
Mexican
Peaceful Latinas, man.
Hold on. Let's make sure his sound is on.
Yeah. Is it?
Hold on, Anthony. What do we do?
Can we hear him? Where can we hear Anthony?
I can hear you. Is it working?
Oh, they can hear him. We just can't hear him because the sound is off. So how can we hear Anthony?
We're
How are you going to interview him?
I'm just trying to.
Right.
Can hear, but you can.
Yes. The chat can hear. The chat can hear Anthony. And when
we get okay, so we're gonna get headphones.
Let us get some headphones on, guys, so that we can hear Anthony.
Dale.
Anthony. Look at his little Mexican.
No. I love the vibe.
Mexican
vibe.
trad mustache. Let's go.
That's too funny.
Man that should be talking about the red pill. The only man that should be talking about
other man. We don't listen to any other man except, and also about my husband, of course,
and my husband
and their husband.
Yeah, that's it. Mexican dad and my husband.
Her husband is voice in the background whenever.
Lots of love from the MPO crew.
A true Chad. It's true. The voice of reason in the back trying to ring us in. Also, Mexican dad does the same thing.
I wanted to give a shout out to Emery Roy with a contribution. She says, shout out to you ladies and Mexican dad, Anthony. He really is putting himself out there to give us live content. I'm currently watching y'all as I do one of my last college finals ever. I graduate this Wednesday. Congratulations, Emery.
Everybody,
Amazing.
Shout out to Emery in the chat.
Amazing
Congratulate her. This girl's a badass. If I would have been doing
go.
the things that where do I connect this on my computer?
Yeah.
Do I have a?
No, I don't think she does.
I don't think I do. Oh no,
I
do.
Sorry.
Sorry, guys.
And then I also want to give a shout out. Wow, Adam Silva keeping the lights on MPL with this contribution. Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday once again, ladies. So happy to see the Dream Team reunited on a Thursday. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't MPL have its 2-year last month? Oh, yes, we did.
We did? Is
Yeah.
that while I was sick?
Yeah, that's when you were sick.
What a great thing to happen.
Some
so
celebration.
Did I come back on Twitter, take down our enemies? To take down. There. Kind of loud.
Yeah. Okay. Anthony, can you talk?
I can hear you.
Why is there an echo?
Yeah, there's an echo.
Yeah, you need the microphone, but turn the volume up on the computer.
I did.
Hold on.
Then one of you has to mute yourselves.
Oh yeah, I can
Hello?
do echo from the. Oh, there we go.
Anthony, can you talk?
Yes, I'm talking. Talking.
Hello.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Oh.
What's up, guys?
Hey, how's it going, Mexican dad?
Looking a bit disheveled, but it's been a rough 48
We've had a
hours.
rough
for
couple
sure.
of days.
It's been insane. It really has. Yeah.
Looking
How
a
are you?
bit crazy.
Mm-hmm. That's what's saying. Well, happy to
Right,
be back.
okay.
So tell us, where do we start? Where do you want to start? Tell
Yeah, like
us.
start. Okay, so we know
Start
that
from the beginning.
you make it
Start
to
from the
every single demonstration, protest that takes place in Southern California. You're truly a historian of sorts, where you're documenting the chaos that has ensued over the last couple of years. And us talking to you, you've told us that you really feel that this is significantly different than some of the other ones. So tell us about the vibes when you first arrived, and then we can kind of go into what it turned into last night.
Yeah, sure. So I had obviously heard that these encampments were happening, colleges, universities nationwide. And when I heard that UCLA was starting one, that was kind of like the closest one to me. And so I obviously wanted to go there last week. I think they started Thursday or Wednesday, but I just wasn't able to make it out there immediately. It would have been kind of nice to kind of see the setup from the very beginning. And then the weekend I was away camping with the family. And so the soonest I could get there was actually Sunday night. Sunday was actually a crazy day for me. I woke up camping with the cows because that's what the event is called. And I was like 3 hours away from UCLA, drove my family back home, and then just grabbed my stuff and headed on over to the protest. So I woke up camping with the cows with the family. And then in
Wow.
the evening, I was witnessing, this protest and documenting. And so, the vibes that night were, or that day were pretty good. It's mostly peaceful. You know how mostly peaceful goes.
Yeah.
And I think what ended up happening was Tuesday was probably one of the crazier nights. I got there early in the morning. I had been asking, security on campus, like what really was going on. I was kind of curious why USC was able to take down the encampment so effectively, and UCLA was still allowed, to still be up. And they said that the difference was that USC is a private school and UCLA is a publicly funded school with public space. So anyone, whether you're a student, journalist, if you're like homeless, it doesn't matter. Anyone's allowed because it's public property. And so that is exactly like there's a place called Royce Hall. It's kind of like the main quad area. And that is where they had set up the encampment. But the problem that UCLA was having, especially with local media and independent journalists, and even with parents and students, was that the little space that they took over was on public property, and they quarantined off like the entire thing and set up barriers. And the thing is, they weren't allowing anyone to go through. And so that's kind of like when the video started surfacing of like students, being turned away by the students inside the encampment, saying, like, hey, you can't come in unless you're an ally. You can't come in unless we properly vet you, et cetera. And the students were like, well, wait a minute. I pay tuition here. And I need to get to my class. And they're like, it doesn't matter. You have to go all the way around. And I think things really kind of started heating up a lot when we started seeing very viral videos, especially on TikTok, of Jewish students that were approaching the encampment and they were being turned away because they were being asked questions like, well, are you pro-Zionism? Are you pro-Israel? And the person's like, well, of course, like I'm Jewish. You know what I mean? Why would I not be pro-Israel? And it's like, oh, then sorry, you're not allowed to come inside. And so they're like, I'm being turned away because I'm Jewish. And so that I think that those videos started kind of going very, very viral, because obviously, there's history there of like Jewish students being turned, or Jewish people, going back decades and in history of being turned away or being treated differently. Right. So I went there, but I noticed that it wasn't just Jewish students myself. It was everybody. It was independent journalists. It was mainstream media, KTLA 5 was there. Fox 11 was there. Nobody was allowed inside. And so what ended up happening is I asked the security, like, well, what's going on? How come no one's allowed inside? This is public space. So they told me basically what had happened was the school had hired private security to protect the encampment, to make sure that nobody was there to create any problems. and that the school administration, this is the security talking, had given full authority to the pro-Palestinian encampment to do with the
What?
space whatever they wanted. And so
Who
whatever
wait, who did this? The school authority?
the school administration, so basically like whoever's like in charge of UCLA, so like top administration.
Uh-huh.
It can be the chancellor. I
Is it
didn't
like a
get specific
dean?
name. Yeah, it could be like the the board there. They didn't give me a specific. They just said, hey, the people in charge. Like the people. Basically like the leadership in the school had decided that the schools had authority over this autonomous zone. And so immediately I started kind of trying to get inside, trying to be like, okay, well, wait a minute, like there's really no authority here to prevent, especially media, to get in here now. What's kind of interesting is that as I've been documenting, there's been a lot of false accusations against me about like what side I'm on, for example, like, oh, well, this guy's, are you really here for the cause, to document the cause, or are you really here, to slander us, or what, like what side are you on? And like one thing like people need to understand about me is that I've been to so many protests and I've documented so many protests. It doesn't matter if you're far right. It doesn't matter if you're far left. I've documented it, and I show up and I do the best that I can with the footage that I've retrieved. Right.
Mhm.
The George Floyd riots and protests are a perfect example, because when I was covering that and I kept calling them protesters, there was a lot of the right wing that were demanding that I call them communists, that I call them far leftist, that I call them, extremists or rioters. And I'm like, look, a rioter is a rioter. A protester is a protester. Like when you're in journalism, like, I'm not going to lie. And, I am conservative by nature. And, obviously I do have a personal bias on many policies and things that people advocate for. But what I was getting to is, as a journalist, when you're doing your job, you should be able to remove your personal bias cap, because everyone has a bias. If anyone's in journalism and tells you that they're not biased towards anything, it's a lie. Everyone
Yeah.
believes in something, right? What makes you a good journalist is, are you able to put those biases aside? So what's interesting is I've been slandered a lot by quote unquote other journalists today, including like stringers and night crawlers and other self-proclaimed journalists. Which is fine, right? I'm a self-proclaimed journalist. I've been doing this for 7 plus years. And what's interesting is that they're not biased. They're not unbiased in their attacks against me. They've been extremely biased. So they're attacking me and naming to me things that they themselves are, right? Like I don't come after quote unquote leftist journalists, right? And say, hey, this guy was there and this and that. As a matter of fact, believe it or not, there was actually a guy there. I believe his name is Sean. Sorry, guy, if I'm forgetting your name. He goes by a cat with news, or a cat with no news, or something like that. And a lot of people, especially on the right, know that he's kind of like more left wing and stuff. I saw him and we kind of made an introduction, and I respect that he's out there documenting as well. I don't need to agree with his personal belief system or his views on life or politics. But at the end of the night, when things got very chaotic, him and I were kind of rolling together. We're like, hey, dude, I watch your back, you watch my back. We're both recording. Obviously, want to get the shot. And like, we're cordial, hey, you believe one thing, I believe another. We might have different life views, but that's what journalism is though. Right. But for whatever reason, people insist on attacking and sounding. It doesn't work. Like nobody cares. Good thing we live in 2024, where so much has changed that, like, I mean, Nick Fuentes is about to be reinstated, like that's how far along we've come on free speech, where people are no longer buying this, oh, well, you're a racist, or you're a Nazi, or you're a this. It's like, dude, that doesn't work anymore. It's May 2024.
Yeah.
You know what I
Would you
mean?
say
Like,
that we've come far with free speech, or has it been where we've come so far with suppressing free speech that the response is for people to have these moments of, no, I'm going to say these uncomfortable things?
I think on the like civilian side of things, like just us, right? Like, so like whenever we go on Twitter, especially on Twitter, I've seen, in my opinion, free speech has gotten a lot better. There were things that we were never able to get away with. I mean, I mentioned someone, but I didn't mention my main girl Isabella is also back on Twitter, right? So I mean, let's go,
Celebrated earlier.
right? Let's
So
go.
we celebrate again.
So to me, it's like, yes, Twitter might not be perfect, but to me, it's like one of the last bastions. Obviously, Andrew Torba is doing a good job with free speech. Telegram is actually still, to me, it's the most superior platform, in my opinion. I just love it. I love how direct it is. You don't have to worry about like algorithms, all that stuff. Andrew Torba, undefeated with the free speech, no denying that. So, props where it's due there for him, and good for him, for being able to build something like that and never bowing to, whether it be the ADL or any other kind of outside influence. So good for him. But definitely Twitter, I feel like we're getting there. And I kind of had a sense of things were headed in the right direction up until this recent bill that I've kind of missed the reporting on it about. Essentially the New Testament is looking like there's parts that are going to start being illegal to just put out there, which is absolutely asinine, and the fact that of course the uni-party is coming together to do this stupidity. I mean, and here's the thing is, maybe a couple years ago, maybe 10 years ago, people would have been cheering this on. But to see Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire, to see so many independents, Charlie Kirk 10 years ago is not the same the Charlie Kirk that it is.
Charlie Kirk
not
3 years
10 years
ago.
ago.
Not exactly. You're absolutely right.
6 years ago, 4 years ago, is not the same person that he is today. Because even now he talks very freely about anti-white rhetoric, racism, and these were things that Nick Fuentes as the Groypers and the dissidents were talking about during the Groyper Wars in 2019, and Charlie Kirk was kicking them out of the event. Remember that?
Yeah, I don't think that we'll get to the level where we will see like Nick Fuentes and the Groypers out in I don't know if we'll see them, come back to like Turning Point, for example. I don't think they'll be getting like invites, but I think we're headed in the right direction when it comes to free speech. And here's the thing, and I wanted to go back a little bit. When I cover these events, I don't have to agree with everything. It does, and again, I don't care if the event is a far right dude. I'll show up to like a Klansman meeting, if they allow me to be there, because I want to document. I want to ask them like, what are your thoughts? Like, what's going through your head right now, right? Whatever the case. And equally, I mean, look, I'm in Los Angeles. A lot of protests out here are a lot more left-leaning politically, right? We had like the Roe v. Wade protests. We had the Floyd protests out here with Black Lives Matter. One of the largest chapters in the country is out here. Unions are on strikes, etc. I've covered it. To me, it's ask me what you want. You want to ask me how I feel about a person. You want to view my views on abortion? Ask me. That doesn't discredit my work, and it never will. Like, oh, you don't want to listen to me? Then that's fine. Then you're not my target audience. I don't want my audience to be full of ignorant dumbasses, for a lack of a better word. But the reality is that I was there to document. I was able to land a successful interview with one of the pro-Palestinian guys there, and like, to me, that's what it's about.
When?
Yeah, I did. I actually posted it earlier today. So as the police had broken down the barricade, I actually ended up interviewing this. It was so weird because like the guy was like on the front line. He's got like a shield. He's got like the gas mask. And like all of a sudden I was like, dude, like, let's do an interview. And he's like, all right. So he took off everything. Literally, like, police are like clashing with protesters right behind him. And what's interesting is he gave me like a 4-minute interview, and I just let him talk, man. Like, it's not about me injecting my personal views. It's about what's your story. Like, that's what journalism is. And that to me is like the most beautiful thing about citizen journalism is you just show up. The Constitution is your permit to be a journalist and free press and free media, which is why, to me, people are like, oh, you're the guy that tried to get in here earlier. I'm like, well, yes, because it's public space. To me, it's not that I'm pissed that they are pro-Palestinians impeding me. It's not that, oh, you're pro-Palestine, therefore I hate that you're impeding me from going. I just genuinely despise people, especially infiltrators, and especially people that genuinely do not care about this movement. In just my honest opinion, because these people bailed the moment the police showed up. Not all of them, of course, but some people. And to me, it's like, I'm not angry at you because you're pro-Palestine. I'm angry at you because you are trampling in my constitutional rights. This is America. I'm a United States veteran. This flag right behind me was gifted to me by my commander, my executive commander at my last base that I served. And that's why, like, I always have it in the background. My father was a U.S. veteran. My grandfather, may he rest in peace, was a prisoner of war, Korea. To me, the Constitution is one of the greatest pieces of paper, if not the single greatest.
Amen.
That it just enshrines everything of what we stand for. People come to this country because of these freedoms. And you cannot, and this is exactly what I told security. It doesn't matter if you are the administration of UCLA. You don't have the authority to impede, especially on free press. You cannot regulate people's movement. You cannot restrict it. So to me, I'm not angry at the pro-Palestinians because they're pro-Palestine. That's not a problem at all. As a matter of fact, had they asked me what my personal views are, because last night I was actually live streaming about 2 a.m. I was actually able to get inside the encampment. I posted a 7-minute video on my Twitter. They're like, "Who are you?" And then like one of them said like, "Oh, this guy's Breitbart," and I'm like, "Breitbart?" I'm like, dude, I don't even think my name is on a single Breitbart article. I've never worked with them, never been They've never even reached out to see if I was interested in working with them. So I'm like, I don't know where they got Breitbart. Then about 3 people started saying like, "Hey, this guy's a Zionist shill." And I'm like, "A Zionist shill?" And I'm like, "What the heck?" So they basically kind of like encircled me. I could have just left, to be honest, but I wanted to show the live stream how I handle myself in these situations. I had a couple hundred people tuned in, and this is
Which
what
was
the guy
top
said.
tier, by the way.
Thank you
Like
so much.
that's like a lesson at keeping your cool, how to deal with
100%.
opposition, it was just poetic.
So what ended up happening was this guy came up and he's like, "Oh, I know this guy. This is Anthony Cabassa." And I was like, "Whoa, bro." The sheer disrespect. First of all, it's Anthony Cabassa. You got to say it right. And he's like, "Well, it doesn't matter. You're the guy that infiltrated earlier. You posted that you infiltrated." I'm like, "Can you show me where I posted that?" So I'm not even kidding you. I had 4 people surrounding me, and I'm cool, bro. Cool as a cucumber. And I'm like, "Do a favor for me. Pull up your Twitter right now. Look me up. My name is Anthony Cabassa. Look me. I'm not hiding who I am. Look up my Twitter, and you can do a quick search bar, and look up infiltrated, because you said that I tweeted that I infiltrated. I never infiltrated. I said I was given access to." He pulled up the tweet, and everyone surrounding him, they look at me, they look at the tweet, and they're like, they looked at him, and they're like, "Bro, what are you talking about? Like, who is this guy? Why do you keep saying he's a pro-Zionist shill?" So another guy's like, "Oh, type in Israel. I guarantee you he has like tweets like that are pro-Zionism." And all they could pull up was my tweets of saying that as a veteran, I am against foreign aid to Israel, to Ukraine, and all these places. So they're reading my tweets that probably align with their wanting to defund these foreign wars. And they literally looked at each other and they're like, "All right, bro, you're wasting our time."
Oops.
And they just left. They just left. And I'm like, dude, again, you want to ask me what my position is? Ask me. I would have told you, but don't accuse me of things that I am not, And I'm like, "Bro, I'm not first they try to say that I am a Zionist. And I'm like, "Well, I'm Mexican, hence the mustache. So, like there's no, DNA there or anything like that. I've never claimed to be. I've never associated myself. I have Jewish friends. I have Palestinian friends. I interview Jews. I interview Palestinians."
This is actually
the big deal?
why, and sorry to cut you off, I
No,
kind of just didn't want to talk about this topic at all anywhere.
But they're
because
forcing us to.
every single time there has been a conflict, a war, an attack against Israel, or Israel attacking Palestine, whatever, every time, and we try to have a balanced view or not take sides or inform like you do, which is very objectively, you're a journalist, you see both sides are nuts. Okay.
Yeah.
So the
It's true.
Israelis and Jews are going to accuse you of anti-Semitism, blood libel, and how dare you not want Israel to defend itself. And then the other side is going to accuse you of genocide, killing children, yada yada yada. And for some reason both sides actually act very racist towards each other and towards anyone else who doesn't 100% support their side.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and this is what's interesting is again, I admit that I do have a mostly, maybe not mostly, I'd say a majority right leaning audience, right? Wherever they
mhm.
might fall. I have a lot of independents. I have Democrats that respect a lot of the work that I do. Left leaning liberals. Like I said last night, I met up with a guy that would be considered left leaning. I was very cordial to him. I've been in situations where I know that a quote unquote journalist is very left leaning and he's documenting, a right leaning event. And, I could stir up controversy. I could be like, hey guys, like this guy's here to take your pictures and like stir up controversy. He's recording. It's public space and it's legal. The only purpose that it would serve for me to warn them is for them to confront that journalist and potentially, I don't know, escalate to something else. I don't even do that because I'm like, look, man, it's public space. I
Yeah.
respect this person's constitutional right. And if people want to find out who he is, go ask him, right? But what's interesting is that, even when I was live, for example, and you guys know I do this all the time, I push back all the time. People were laughing at the pro-Palestinian encampment folks because, first, it's going back to a little bit to what you're saying. People demanded that I stop calling them pro-Palestine protesters and that I start calling them pro Hamas and terrorists. These are like
Oh.
the very like neocon boomers, like, oh, these aren't
And
pro
let,
Palestine. They're pro genocide or
so
whatever
these
other.
are people on the internet telling you to call them pro Hamas, or they wanted to? Because I
Yeah.
guess that's also kind of my question of what your experience was while you were there and what you observed, right? It
Mhm.
feels like we're at a time where like the hyper partisan politics are just annoying people in general. I feel like most people end up falling in this like kind of like moderate space that doesn't get the same attention that these further left right activists get. So my question to you is, from what you saw there, are you seeing that the youth is radicalized in support of either side, or do you see more just an awareness of the fact that, hey, we're anti genocide, or where do you think that it falls? And is there like a genuine concern for being anti-war, anti-genocide, and for that and for that reason seeing a support of Palestine? Or do you think that we're actually seeing the radicalization of our youth where they're actually pro Hamas?
That's a very good question. Very good question because that the only way you're really going to be able to find out is, of course, showing up on the spot and asking around and observing, right? Which is why I do what I do. I want people to, hey, it's not me here, taunting people, not me inserting myself into it. It's just you hit record and you let people speak for themselves. The pro-Palestine encampment, this is where I think it went wrong, and this is where I think it got some things right. Right? Obviously, it's your First Amendment right to protest. It's not your right to quarantine people off, tell media they're not allowed to go in there when it's constitutionally protected, and to tell people that if they're not with you, then you are not allowed into public space. That's illegal, right? And I don't know how
Came with the
UCLA.
shield.
What?
I have a video of them running with the little shields made out of
Oh
garbage
yeah,
cans.
yeah, exactly, yeah. And so here's the thing. I would say that a majority of the protests, I would say a majority of the protesters that were there were just students or kids or college age students,
Mhm.
maybe not there, maybe their friends, family. that wanted to feel like a sense of belonging, that they were making a
Right.
difference. They're like, hey, this is for my friend. I have a friend that invited me. I want to show up. I want to do signs. I want to practice. Because look, this is also what I said to people. Regardless of how you feel about it, this is history. That's how these images and videos make it into history books, because you need people there documenting. And that's what
For sure.
like I'm there documenting, right? And you need to know the full scope of things. A perfect example of why it's important. Earlier today, I saw a tweet of people showing one side. They were behind the police line, okay? And the police, there's two of them with like things that look like shotguns that shoot rubber bullets. And on this side of the police, you can't see who they're hitting, but all you see is these two officers just unloading with the rubber bullets, and people are like, oh my gosh, this is disgusting. I can't believe what I'm watching. People don't even probably know that the rubber bullets are just like, they're just shooting anybody and everyone. What are the odds that I am on the opposite side and I captured that exact moment, and I was able to show that the reason why the police were shooting these rubber bullets was because protesters were told to move back, and instead they were holding wooden shields and they were not moving back. So those police that were shooting rubber bullets were shooting onto the wooden shields. But again, like, that's just like the media, right? And like, I'm not faulting the person that took the video from the other side, because people are going to run with it. If you're anti-cop, you're going to grab that video and make up some fabrication that like, oh my God, look at them. They're just shooting anyone and everyone. But here I am on the opposite side with the exact same video, and I'm showing that the police are actually shooting wooden bullets in hopes that the people would continue to move back. So that's why it's so important
of the politics we exist in.
Exactly.
It's two separate realities being documented at the same event.
And so just the part that I would say went wrong with the encampment is that the people that they put in charge, because there was communist infiltration. We have the Revolutionary Communist that has a large chapter here in Los Angeles. There's images and videos of inside the encampment from people that actually went undercover, before there was even any rumor that the encampment was going to be taken down. And there was communist stuff everywhere. I personally took pictures of some of the flyers that said, "Are you a communist? Join the revolution." And these are the signs. These are the signs of you being a communist. You're anti-genocide. You're anti this. So it's like they create this material to cater to the people inside, knowing that they are vulnerable, knowing that they are, they have family probably in Palestine. It's like, okay, how do we get these people like to sentimentally like grow, into communism? And so I think, there's a lot of layers there. Yeah.
One thing that really pissed me off on Twitter with the far right, which is very anti-Israel and anti-Zionism and sometimes even anti-Judaism, that they're taking the side of these communists. And so there's no nuance, because their hate for Israel supersedes any common ground, any balanced opinion, and common sense.
Where they'll criticize.
Where they're literally siding with these communists. And it's like,
and the example that Linda's referring to is the fraternity, the Jewish fraternity that we saw holding up the American flag. It's not a Jewish fraternity.
They made that up. The far right made that up. The Groypers made that up. They made that up because while they were holding up the American flag, and I have the whole video, by the way, there's two other kids walking behind them with the Israel flag. So they're like, oh, well, it's a Jewish. And I go, I don't care if it's a Jewish person, a brown person, a yellow person, transvestite, a person with 3 fucking eyes. You are not letting the American flag and get destroyed by this communist. I'm going to respect you. It was actually Pi Kappa Phi, Pi Caps. I was really good friends with that fraternity at FIU when I was in college. And I've been saying for a while, since the controversy of the dancing chicks a few months ago, that Greek life is very on brand, very Americana brand.
Yeah.
you know, they are usually right wing. They usually care about their looks. The men care about working out, getting chicks. They're not trying to be nerds. The girls are usually also, you know, networking and doing the right thing.
Yeah, the
So,
networking is
yeah.
it does set, we've talked about this, like it sets like beauty standards of like fitness. You got to have a certain GPA and average, so it keeps you involved in school.
Yeah.
Because of networking.
You can't be a hoe.
You can't be a hoe.
When
You
we were
can't
in
be a hoe.
college and as sororities, they didn't want you underage drinking. They didn't want you being promiscuous. They don't want you sitting on top of men's laps. They actually kind of gave you like a code of ethics and conduct
Correct.
to follow while you were in that sorority, even dressing up very modestly. Whenever we would have chapters on Thursday, we'd have certain wardrobe or whatever things that we could wear and could not wear. So,
yeah, I think it's definitely.
I want to show you guys
feel
this video.
that what we're watching right now is almost like it's scary.
Oh, sorry, guys.
Oh, was that one of the videos that you were gonna play?
Yeah.
You know, when you see the internet get on there and they're like getting mad at content creators for saying, you know, God bless these kids for holding up this American flag and treating you as if you're somehow an enemy of America because you're sharing the story of these kids, we've lost the plot.
Yeah. It's the same thing with the people that accuse us of being anti-Semitic or calling out certain Jewish behavior. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, when you know we've been calling out, I'm actually slandered as an anti-Semite for criticizing HB 269 that DeSantis signed in Israel, which was a bill that criminalized hate speech. And you know, I've said it on the podcast before, and I'll say it again. I could think that something is abhorrent to say and disagree with it. People say really nasty things about Cuban immigrants, and they have every right in the world to say that as Americans. And in America, that's okay. And I'm going to always defend people's rights to say what they want to say in America, because that's why my family left communist Cuba, so that I would have the opportunity to be able to say and exist the way that I wanted. And I feel that every American should have that right. And, you know, unfortunately, I just don't think that everyone respects that.
Yeah. No, they don't. I do want to show you guys.
I just wanted to say like one last thing. I you know, I don't know if you guys want me like to stick around or I can just sign off after this. Okay, sure. But I just wanted to say one thing real quick. One thing that was really interesting to me was the only interview that I actually got was with an actual Palestinian, meaning his parents came from Palestine and you know, he's here and he's true Palestinian, according to him, right? Obviously, there's no way to do a DNA test on the spot. And when I interviewed him, again, that interview is over on my Twitter. Some of his talking points, just listen to this, okay? Let me see if I can quickly pull it up on my phone, so you guys can kind of see what we're dealing with here. And the point that I'm going to try to make, when I interviewed this gentleman, this was some of his talking points. I asked him, you know, what is the purpose of this encampment? And he said, we need to put an end to Zionism, which he said is not the same as being like pro-Israel, right? He said Zionism is different from being Jewish. That's what he said. But obviously, I think we know that there is a bill that was just passed that said that there's now no difference between Zionism. And if you say that you are anti-Zionist, then you are now
after you're done with this.
Okay. Another talking point says that he believes that AIPAC has too much influence over Americans, politicians, and foreign policy.
Agreed.
Another point is he wants to divert all foreign aid to include the aid to Ukraine and other foreign nations, and that we should instead be using that money for American citizens. He even said, don't even give any of it to Palestine. Like, look, I'm an American now, you know, like this money should be used here. Another point that he had, that I think this was the last one. When I asked him what's the solution in Israel, he said that you know, I asked him, can there be a two-state solution? Can Israel survive next to Palestine and they can be peaceful? And he said that there is no two-state solution and that things just need to go back to the way it was in pre-Israel 1948, and that it needs to go back to when Jews and Muslims and Christians lived in peace, and it was peaceful for over 1,000 years, whatever the case might be. Again, his words, not mine. I'm not trying to, just a messenger. But I'm looking at some of these points, right? AIPAC has too much influence over American politicians. They have too much influence over Americans. They have too much control of all these things. I listen to those points, and because I'm on Twitter, I'm like, dude, if you just tweeted out these points and I asked the question, who said this? A pro-Palestinian or an right-wing extremist? You wouldn't be able to tell because it's similar, right? I've seen that kind of talk on both sides, and I'm not going to try to divert the question, like making it seem like I've never said these things. I myself have said these things. I have said that foreign countries have too much influence over our politicians. Linda, you and I talked about this. One of the most enraging days of my recent life is when aid was passed to Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan, and then the TikTok ban and censorship laws, and then our representatives had the audacity to wave Ukrainian flags in the U.S. House of Congress, a house that is supposed to represent
the American people,
the American people, and the interests of the American people. And it is so disgusting. And to me, what's so sad is that maybe in a different world where we didn't have race wars creating all this stuff, these leftist populists and the populist right which share similar views,
they share a lot in common.
They share a lot in common. They want to end foreign wars. They want to end foreign aid, etc. Now, if you're listening, you're like, oh, Anthony, you're so stupid. That's not what they want. They just want to kill everybody and they want to kill every Jew. I can't generalize for everybody. I'm just talking within context to what the one person said, and you can hear it for yourself. If you think you know more than everyone, then by all means, go out and start your own media account about the truths that you know that nobody else knows, right? But the reality is that I could see a scenario where whether it's the pro-Palestinian folk are able to join the thing that's in the middle that is stopping that unity, of course, are communists, anarchists, the people that have infected themselves into these movements. And what's interesting, and I'll end it with this, is I had a pro-Palestine guy that I've actually I've made good friends with him. I believe he is Palestinian. I've seen him a lot about these events. Before he started covering pro-Palestine videos, you know what this young man did? He actually fights and documents and has arrested multiple pedophiles. His entire page is dedicated to catching pedophiles. Him and his buddies make fake accounts and they catch pedophiles. And then as they show up, they confront them. You've seen the pages, right? You guys have seen those style pages, right? This is what he did. He came, so we were friends, and then I started covering the pro-Palestine. He felt that I was painting them in a negative light, and he said, well, who cares if you're not allowed into the encampment? What right do you have as a non-Palestinian to go into that campus? And I'm like, okay, see, that's where I draw the line. First of all, I'm not going to say what I was about to say. First of all, shut up. I'll just leave it at that.
I can hear you.
I can hear it. I heard it too.
Like, read my mind. It's like, first of all, bro, like, with all due respect, I love your work. But the reality is, and the reason why I'm here is to show people that this movement has been hijacked by infiltrators, feds potentially, and communists and anarchists. And you are allowing these people to represent you. This is the same thing that happened with Black Lives Matter. Right. When Black Lives Matter tried to make it seem like it was about police brutality. Hey, you know who else is against police brutality? I am. I've been falsely imprisoned. I've been kettled. I've almost been imprisoned. I've had my run-ins with law enforcement. I'm not the biggest fan, right? Let's just say that.
Well, Anthony, all you got to do is go back to the 2020 riots where while they were protesting, what had happened with George Floyd, a lot of people on the right were protesting, or at least opposing, law enforcement overreach on these lockdowns that we were having, on
Exactly.
the masks and all these other things. And there was an opportunity there for everybody to agree on
Yep.
law enforcement overreach is a bad thing.
You're absolutely, and you drew the conclusion for me, which is what I was getting to, but you nailed it. When the whole police thing started, what perfect opportunity for people that, claim to be against police injustice. And the right was also protesting police overreach and state overreach on the free movement of people. And what's interesting is like, well, it's because the right was talking about, the right was protesting the pandemic, and we needed to stay indoors. Okay, so then do you equally condemn the Black Lives Matter protest? Because I distinctly remember that anytime the right did anything, they were called what? Super spreader events. But what was that headline when they came out by the tens of thousands for George Floyd? They said, actually, these Black Lives Matter
Actually.
protests might actually be helping get everything back to normal on the pandemic. These are actually not unsafe. And you had police and nurses. Police were kneeling, which again, not a fan, right, of law enforcement, not as a general, but obviously these little instances or whatever. But you're right. There was a time that both the left, the populist left, populist right, whatever you want to call it, Americans could have united against overreach by the government. And what was it that did it for the Black Lives Matter? It was Patricia. I believe her name is Collins. I forget her name is. It was her going on camera, getting interviewed and saying, when they asked her, do you have a political belief, like an ideology? And what did she respond with? She said, yes, all three of us are trained Marxists. That is our ideology. So immediately, everything was ruined, because the moment you do not disavow communism, which, by the way, communism, and I'm going to come out here and say it, is far worse than what any fascist government has ever done. Not trying to minimize, not saying that it wasn't equally as abhorrent, but communism has killed millions of people more. And the fact that UCLA allowed communists to recruit, put up propaganda throughout their campus, and basically lead this. I mean, you had checkpoints where the students had shirts and hats that said, all cops are bastards. Los Angeles cops are bastards. That's what the school is sanctioning. And so to me, what should have happened is the real pro-Palestinian movement should have never allowed the communists to take over the messaging, the optics, and basically the whole operation. And what's so funny is that same guy that I interviewed, the actual Palestinian, you know what he said to me off camera? And if anyone really wants to press me that hard, and if he really said it, there was a point where he looked around and he's like, you know what I want to know? Who the hell are all these white people and why are they in charge? So he was just like,
White
bro,
liberals.
he's like, there's like almost no Palestinians here. He's like, you got to understand, Anthony, like there's only like he said something about like how a percentage of Americans are actually Arab, and an even fewer population of them. I don't know if he said something like 80,000 actual Palestinians. And I asked him if LA had a concentration of Palestinians here, and he said no. He said that it was actually Dearborn, Michigan. So he's like, a lot of the Palestinian community is actually on the east side. They're not really in the West Coast. So he's like, so I showed up and there's all these like white people in charge. He's like, who gave him that authority? And I'm like, bro, these are white left-leaning people, and they're wearing shirts that say revolutionary communists.
They're here to save you.
And they've hijacked the movement, man. And
Like,
now
that
that's
happens every time.
what the nation will see you as, because you didn't disavow. And when I asked that pro-Palestine guy that came after me, the one that I was telling you about, that he has like To Catch a Pedophile or whatever the series is called, he commented on my thing saying, who are you to this and that? I was like, well, first of all, man, it's my First Amendment right. Other countries might be different. Maybe you don't know that, but here, this is the way we roll. And I was like, how about you disavow the communists that have overtaken the encampment? You know what he did? Never replied. And then he ended up deleting his initial comment because he was getting eaten alive by the people that saw what they saw. And I'm going to say this one last time for everybody that needs to hear clear. The moment you align yourself with communism, pro-communism sentiment, or you allow communists to take over messaging and optics. I had a woman that said, well, who cares if they're communists? At least they're our allies. A, you're stupid. B, you're extremely stupid. And 3, you're extremely low IQ. Read your history. Read your history on communism. You align yourself with communism, you are an immediate enemy of everything that America stands for. And I don't care if that sounds cliche or like, oh, the little patriot, whatever. It's not about that. Research communism. Every single day of my life, I will fight communism and every communist ideology known to man until the day that I die. So help me God.
Amen. Amen and absolutely. Anthony, it's worth mentioning. I don't know. I'm not going to speak for Linda, but I'll speak for me. I left the Democrat Party because it went so unhinged far left that I'm like, has this party adapted communism as the norm? And that was my red pill. It's like, this party has abandoned me. I can't, as the daughter of Cuban exiles, as the granddaughter of a woman who spent 12 years in a prison for her political ideology, being the granddaughter of a man who literally fought against the communist regime of Fidel Castro. I couldn't justify myself being a part of a party that was making excuses to accept communism as part of where we were at. And that's what drove me further right.
Speaking of communists, the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, is actually on the side of Palestine. And he said that he was officially ending all relationships, all diplomatic relationships with Israel. And that's not a person, whether you are on the Palestinian side or not, and are against genocide, that is not a person that you want to be that you want to be praising. You don't want to praise the narco terrorist. This guy Gustavo Petro was part of Las FARC. Like, not only was he a communist, a socialist, but also he was part of the guerrilla groups in Colombia that took over the Department of Justice over like 25 years ago. So really bad guy. There's actually protests almost every single weekend in Colombia in the last couple of months in every city. Okay, even cities where he allegedly historically won, against this guy, asking to remove him from office before even his time is up. Now, I want to move forward and talk about, we're about an hour into the podcast, so I want to talk about the GOP passing the anti-Semitism bill. We spoke very openly about HB 269 here in Florida, which Ron DeSantis passed back in 2022, right? Correct, 2022. So there is a representative here in Florida. His name is Andy Fine. He is Jewish. And Andy Fine basically creates legislation for Jewish people only. Andy Fine and I have had a run-ins on Twitter where he called me an anti-Semite because I called him out for only creating legislation.
Called both of us anti-Semites.
He called both of us anti-Semites under the MPL 305 podcast account because I called him out. This man has every bill that he has created in his time in the Florida House has been a Jewish, pro-Israel, pro-Jewish bill. The last one was HB 269. And so for those of you who don't remember, there is this group, I forgot their name right now, but they were basically passing off flyers. And they were saying things like, both the Biden administration, the Trump administration are filled with Jews. The people who control Disney are Jewish. The people, like, all these things. They're passing out these flyers, and some of these flyers obviously ended up in the front lawns, in the front porch of Jewish citizens here in Florida and in other states. Well, that, not violence, not anything, just those flyers was enough for Randy Fine to create this piece of legislation, which was the strongest anti-Semitism bill ever passed by Florida or Governor DeSantis. It didn't just stop there, though. These people flew all the way to Israel to sign HB 269. And back in 2021, they also flew to Israel to sign another bill. So what we are seeing at a national scale, at the federal level, these new bills is essentially what already happened here in Florida. Let me just break that down real quick. So basically, by the way, this is a bipartisan bill. The rep who introduced it is a Republican lawmaker. His name is Mike Lawler from New York, and he had 15 Democratic co-sponsors. There were Republicans and Democrats who voted against it, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz. I think AOC voted against it too. I don't know about Ana Paulina. Maybe you can tell us about that, Anthony. I haven't checked her record on that. But basically what the bill does is it requires that the Department of Education use the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance working definition of anti-Semitism when enforcing federal anti-discrimination laws. The working definition, pay attention to the word working, because the working definition means that it's ever changing, that
Right, fluent.
anything could be anti-Semitism.
Yep.
So the working definition says anti-Semitism is in part a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. The definition includes denying Jewish people the right to self-determination by claiming that the state of Israel is a racist state and drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. Now, I want to let you guys know that working definition, hold on one second, it's here. That working definition looks something like this. Okay, contemporary examples of anti-Semitism in public life, the media, schools, workplace, and in religions, and then in the religious sphere. Okay, could mean taking into account anything that looks like this, but not limited to calling for, aiding, or justifying the killing or harming of Jews in the name of a radical ideology, extremist view of religion. Granted,
violence against
anybody is already illegal. I don't know. You guys tell me, right? Like there's no exclusions of we can commit violence against a certain gender or ethnic religion. Making mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations about Jews as such, or the power of Jews as a collective, such as, especially but not exclusively, the myth about the world Jewish conspiracy or Jews controlling the media, economy, government, blah, blah, blah. But what I'm not going to go through all of these. You guys can read them.
Just 1 second, because I think that Anthony has to log off. So we do want to give him an opportunity.
He does?
To share where people can follow him. Anthony, please, you're putting out great content. I know that a lot of things have gone viral over the last few days. Can you tell our audience where it is that they can find you so that they can stay abreast of the situation as it develops live?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, both of you, for having me here today. Also, I love how like Linda's like, he does. It's like me and Isabella are playing a prank. Like, nah, we got you. But yeah, if you guys want to follow me on most social medias, including Gab and True Social, I go by Inform with Anthony. I also have a TikTok now. Whenever the government wants to ban something, it usually means that it's actually the opposite of what they're claiming it's bad for you for. So I actually am on TikTok now. Always remember, folks, whatever the government tells you to do the opposite. You'll be fine. But on Twitter specifically, I am trying to grow that one. It's just my name, Anthony Cabassa _ So if you just type in Anthony Cabassa, Cabassa, do that. Yeah, you guys can follow me on all socials. I'm going to continue to, there's still 3 like local universities that are still having encampments. One actually just opened up in Long Beach, and you guys can go ahead and, again, just follow me, and I'll be posting as footage continues to roll in. But thank you again, Linda and Isabella. Thank you so much for having me.
We shall talk
tomorrow.
Absolutely. Let's do it. All right. Have a good night.
Shalom.
Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
So back to this working anti-Semitism definition. I mean, I'll put this right here. I'm gonna link it for you guys to see if you are interested in reading about this. Where are the comments? Oh, here we go. Hold on, in case anybody wants to talk about that. But there is a part here. Let's see if I can find it. Christ, Jesus. It just basically says, oh, here we go. Using the symbols and images associated with classic anti Semitism, for example, claims of Jews killing Jesus are blood libel to characterize Israel or Israelis. Now, this is a whole conversation that is actually taking place right now on Twitter, where people like Charlie Kirk, people like Matt Walsh are saying this bill could potentially ban some of the New Testament in college campuses. And you have a lot of Christian Zionists, mostly Protestants, evangelicals, saying, "How dare you?" I got into it with some people today. How dare you even point out that the Jews killed Christ when indeed Christ died for our sins? And my argument to these ladies today was, first of all, no one is going to hold the modern Jewish person accountable for what happened 2000 years ago or more than that. No one's going to look at the average Jewish person walking down the street and say, you're responsible for killing Christ. I mean, I that's never been something that I thought of. That's not something that I imagine most people don't hold them accountable. But I think what I was saying today on Twitter, the more you try to hide stuff, the more you try to censor people or tell them, don't think this way, this is actually what you should say or not say, the more you actually bring animosity and hate towards that protected group of people. We saw this during the 2020 riots, where a lot of people's perspective on BLM, a lot of people's perspective on, I hate to say it, Black people overall changed due to the fact that they were forcing you to put a back square. They were forcing you to be pro BLM. You were getting doxxed, harassed, and mistreated if you didn't. If you had any criticisms of these people burning down America, that was problematic. I just want to address someone here. I don't know why you are so obsessed. Like, this is just so weird. This is the second comment from another account. I don't know why you're so obsessed with the Florida Standard and Will Witt and the leaked nude photos and his sexual abuse allegation. I don't care. It's so irrelevant.
Oh, I mean, we actually talked about this
we have
6 months
we
ago.
have, but it's so irrelevant. Will Witt is no longer part of the Florida Standard. That's all gone. He doesn't even be part of politics anymore. He's basically living his life as a trad boy in a fucking ranch, raising cows and milking cows and getting eggs.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's gone.
I
He's
just
gone, like,
I just
seems
don't
like he's
understand.
like red pill leaning. Yeah, it's not really. We kind of already covered it. The leak seems to be like old and spiteful. I don't think that he was involved in any sex work. I don't think he was a man. Probably it looks like
He
a
sent
selfie that
some
he sent
dick
a
pics
girl
to women
in college,
and they fucking leaked them. Big deal. Like, what do you want us to do about that? Who hasn't
I want to
sent
address this
dick
because I said,
pictures?
what do you mean by end dual citizenship? I don't think that anybody who is serving in Congress, whether it be a state representative, whether it be a senator, whether it be a president, I don't think that those people should have dual citizenship. And there is an alarming number of representatives that do have Israeli dual citizenship. And it's concerning, particularly when you have results like what we're watching happen now live, because you have to wonder, whose interest are you looking out for? If you have a dual citizenship in Israel, if I look at your funds and contributions to your campaigns and AIPAC is your biggest donor, and then you're using your power to pass laws that protect one group. It's just one group. I mean, the Black people get discriminated against, and there's no special laws for them. There's no special laws for even for gay people. Like, why is it that it's only like one group, one identifying group that are getting these special laws? And it's alarming as an American when you realize that these people do have a dual citizenship, because you do have to wonder, where is your allegiance to? Where is your loyalty? And can I count on you to actually take care of America's best interest? Because I wonder, this bill is not constitutional. So if this makes its way to the courts,
but it did pass in Florida.
the HB 269 passed in Florida.
Right. That same bill is what this bill is. Almost.
No, and not at all, because HB 269
It's with the littering and
leaned
whatnot.
into private property.
Mhm.
You can't go onto somebody's property and leave written material.
Mhm.
This isn't even defined. Like if you're on the internet and you're like, the Jews killed Jesus.
No, this is the Department of Education has to adopt that definition. That's what the bill is. The bill's specifically for the Department of Education. The federal bill.
Well, the federal bill actually
Yeah.
mentions the Holocaust.
Yeah, they have to adopt that definition.
They
of
have
the
to adopt
Holocaust.
this definition, which is ever
Yeah.
changing.
Yes.
But the bill itself punishes these things. So then my question is there's no way, like
What
what's going to happen?
what they're trying to do is force the Department of Education to adopt that definition so they can enforce it through the Department of Education. Does that make sense?
Got you.
Yeah. So it's really more to target these students within universities and get them expelled and get them kicked out and yada yada yada. That's really what they're doing it for. You know, and this is the thing. We were going to get to this place even during Trump. There was laws that Trump passed that were I was against, including some of the anti-Semitism bills. But the problem, is that thing flickering? The problem, I think, or one of the problems is the gaslighting that takes place within conservatives, within people about this particular bills. When I got into it with Rep. Andy Fine here in Florida was because I called him out and I said, this man literally only passes bills to benefit his ethno religion. Imagine if we did that all the time. Here comes the Christian Zionist who wants to make you feel bad, wants to make me feel bad for calling that out. And that's problematic, at least to
That
me.
is, of course, it's problematic. When we're punishing the criticism of any group, it's problematic.
Mhm.
And I mean, do you think this is going to end up being a red pill to like evangelicals? Where
No,
it's like-
I think evangelicals will sacrifice their firstborn child to Israel and Jews if they could, genuinely. Like, I think evangelicals are literally insane. And no offense to any evangelicals here, but that's just the reality. The way that, they'll look at a Catholic and say that you're going to hell for
Yeah.
having a statue of Virgin Mary because that's idolatry. But at the same time, they idolize a piece of land and idolize another religion, another demographic. It's pretty fucking bizarre. I want to give a shout out real quick to Fairy Princess, who sent us a super sticker earlier today. I don't know why it's not letting me like post it. My hair is so messed up because of the stupid headphones.
Right here.
I almost want to
Here it
like
is.
leave them up. And then
Diaphon's
also
driving me nuts.
Arietta Maizes, I think that's your friend. She said,
Ariela
welcome.
myself.
Yes, she said, welcome back. I'm going to leave this on because my hair got messed up. So I might as well just leave it messed up for good now while we finish the podcast.
Yeah, I think that the entire combination of what it is that we're watching, but guys, this isn't so far off from what we've been saying for a while. We've been talking about the TikTok ban, and we exposed how it is that a lot of the majority of the people who voted in favor of this TikTok ban were receiving money from AIPAC. It was never about China's control. It was about controlling the narrative around what's happening between Israel and Palestine. And it seems like we are being held hostage by the conflict in Israel right now and by the power and influence that the Israeli lobby has over American politics.
Yeah. Which is crazy because then they go back, and if you start pointing it out and you say these people have too much power, it goes back to, are you participating in anti-Semitism by saying that a collective group of people of this particular country, Israel, demographic, is controlling Congress? But it's like, follow the fucking money. You guys cannot keep gaslighting us when we can go to openseekers.gov and see how Marco Rubio is getting X amount of money, Nancy Pelosi X amount of money, Elisa Stefanik, mostly all these people from AIPAC. You can't continue to gaslight us because this is why things have gotten so out of control.
Correct.
Okay. We're almost at the end, but I do want to talk real quick about Nick Fuentes. I know that there's some groypers in here that they were like, God bless Nick Fuentes, because I said something about the groypers and stuff like that. So Nick Fuentes is going to be allowed back on Twitter. I don't know if he will last a long time, although I think that he'll probably be more careful so he can last within the Twitter sphere. I just think that the ADL particularly is going to have a field day with this. I think they're going to use it to come after
They're
Elon
going to use
Musk
the
and
same
Twitter.
bill that they just signed for TikTok.
We're talking about Twitter, though.
Absolutely, and they're going to go into that same bill
Mhm.
because that bill wasn't specific to China
No,
or
it was
TikTok.
it was internet. The
Correct.
internet, yeah.
So they're going to try and use that same bill. They're going to find a way of using that same bill to go after X
Mhm.
if they let Nick Fuentes back on, which
they-
Elon said that he was.
Which they would. Which they will. Which is, I wanted to ask Anthony his opinion on that.
Michael says the ADL is coming after gamers, and that is, of course they are.
I talked about
Of course
that on
they
my
are. They weren't
Instagram.
going to create. They weren't going to
Mhm.
allow that space to fester without control of them. They weren't going to allow that place, particularly that they recognize that usually who are gamers, the youth is in those gaming circles, and they want to be able to get into those minds when they're still young. They can't have these kids being radicalized against the Israeli lobby while they're playing, Call of Duty or whatever.
Right. Yeah. I just, I don't know. I don't know where this is all going to lead in terms of like free speech.
Well,
and
do you think that it's leading
anti-Semitism.
into something for the 2024 elections? Like, okay, let's talk about this really, because there's a lot of theories online.
I do with the TikTok, but just so you know, the TikTok ban, so they want to they want to force it. It's a divestment. The bill itself says that TikTok has 6 months to sell it to an American company, and if they don't sell it to an American company, then they could potentially get banned. What they're not saying is that by that point, Trump could come back, and I mean, they still gotta pass it. I mean, I don't know. The people are just saying like Trump. I don't know. Trump would work something out.
But the theories that I'm hearing on that, at least that I'm seeing online, is the speculation that just like we know that a lot of these like riots, a lot of the times protests are not always organic,
Mhm.
and it's almost like, were these what we were just seeing in the universities, was there an element of
That's what they said.
of
Soros,
coordination
yeah.
to make that
That
happen in
Soros
order
was
to
the one-
justify
Yeah.
the bill?
Right.
Yeah, I know that people say Soros all the time, and Soros is like the boogeyman that everybody blames
Yeah.
for
But
everything.
those were the headlines this week,
Right.
though.
Okay.
Yeah. So apparently there was like dark money funding these Antifa groups on college campuses.
I want to answer to this. Jamie says public schools are destroying children's souls. Yes, because teachers unions are in control of public schools. The public schools in itself are not the problem. It is the teachers unions who
Mhm.
fight to put progressive curriculum into these schools. And it's funny because I was going to tweet this out today and I didn't. We were just talking about George Soros, which is that it's always George Soros is influencing our elections, and it's never the teachers union are pumping money into elections for influence. One of the biggest donors to the Democrats is actually the American Federation of Teachers. Actually, I have a screenshot here that shows that between 2021 and 2022, hold on, let me get this. Between the American Federation of Teachers, the American Federation of Teachers, and don't quote me now, it's 3 different teachers unions, $4 million donated to by teachers unions to the elections, the 2021 to 2022 elections. 4 million of that went to Democrats. 24,000 of it went to Republicans. They are the single biggest union in the entire country. Is not the American Federation of Teachers, but it is one of the teachers unions. That's the biggest union. The biggest comprised union body. And you guys have to think about what that means and why unions are so powerful, is because they can mobilize a vote very easily. If you've got 50,000, 100,000, 1,000,000 people enrolled into your union, and you tell your union members who pay dues every month for you to have their best interest, you need to vote X in order for you to have Y that you depend on, then now you've mobilized those millions, 10,000, however many people it is that you have in that union towards that vote. It is very powerful. It has a lot of control. And, you know, I'm actually going to be talking about this more on my Twitter. So make sure that you guys follow me. But it's a problem that we're seeing where these unions and special interest groups, because there's been such a hyper focus over the last 4 years since COVID on local politics. And there's really been a shift where Americans have said, I'm not just going to show up to the voting booth every 4 years and vote. I'm going to be involved locally, and I'm going to show up to school board meetings, and I'm going to hold my commissioners accountable and my city council and so on and so forth. The response has been that now these unions and special interest groups are pumping money into operatives to attack regular Americans like we've been attacked for the last 3 years. And it's a problem, and it's something you talk to, you get to the bottom of a lot of these like smear campaigns that happen against people on our side, and you'd be shocked that 9 times out of 10 there's usually union money involved in that.
In term, you know, in going back to the Fuentes situation, because I just have to get this off my chest, not because I'm a fan or anything, but the reality is that if they let Fuentes be online uncensored, he'd probably be one of the biggest and most influential right-wing commentators of our time. That's a reality. And I think we are going to see if that is going to be the case. I think people like the Daily Wire, actually speaking of
you
the Daily
mentioned
Wire,
it earlier today when you made the contrast about Charlie Kirk 4 years ago versus Charlie Kirk today.
Yeah.
And in reality, whatever way you want to look at it, a lot of the things that maybe he's saying it with a lot more eloquent than maybe Nick Fuentes did, but there are certain points that Charlie Kirk is making today that align with 2018, 2019 Nick Fuentes.
I don't necessarily particularly see eye to eye with everything that he says, but when it comes to foreign policy, I'm not talking about criticism of Jews, like foreign policy, explain the Middle East conflict, explaining foreign aid, things that are verifiable. He's one of the best ones out there.
Yeah.
It is what it is. You know, we'll see where that goes. The last thing I wanted to just quickly point out is that the Daily Wire has put a gag order on Candace Owens. First, they were kind of discussing a debate between Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro. And I think Candace Owens continued to just talk about either, I don't even think she continued, to mention Daily Wire. Somehow, some way, they sent her a gag order because I guess in her contract, especially when you work for a company like that, you have a non-disparaging clause.
Right, correct.
And the non-disparagement clause means that even after you leave, you're not allowed to speak bad of the company, trying to ruin their reputation, et cetera, et cetera. So as of right now, Candace Owens is gagged by the Daily Wire, which is beyond me. I mean,
it's only gonna radicalize, like it's only proving her point more.
Yeah,
like you go into the comments and people are like, wow, okay, so everything that's being said is true. You do have control over speech. You are trying to stifle speech. Do I think that Trump will debate Biden before November? No, I don't think so.
Well, I thought that Biden had accepted.
Had he?
That's what Trump sent in an email. Yeah, Trump said that Biden had accepted, and then Trump was like super thug, like anytime, anywhere, I can go to you, you can go to me, let's go, like super gangster. He's like, I'm in New York, you're the, like, just so gangster. Probably will, who knows? But guys, please don't forget to like this video.
Please share it, comment on it when this is done so that it can help get us on the algorithm. You know, we haven't been recording every week, so that doesn't help us. You guys know that we really do this as a passion project for us, for you guys, and to be able to share our views when you guys always ask us. So help support us if you can. We appreciate it so much. A like, a follow, a mention, telling people how cool and based we are all things that help us. So please help us grow our channel, because remember, there's no Illuminati, no lizard people, and no Israel lobby
No
funding
Israel
mostly
lobby. We
peaceful
have
Latinas.
no lobby.
So
we're self-funded, so any contribution is also liked.
and follow me on Twitter.
Follow
at
Bella
Red
on
Pill
Twitter.
Beba, BEBA.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, that is about that for tonight. Thank you so much for being with us, and we will see you next week.